On today's show, we will have Al Costanzo back with us. He's been here before. It's been about a year and a half or so. He is an artist and an art teacher. He's going to come in and talk to us about art and beauty. And we're going to we get to look at a famous work of art and kind of break it down so we understand why it's beautiful, why it isn't, why it works, why it doesn't. So hope you'll join us for that. It's a really interesting conversation, a little something we don't normally do. An interesting conversation. And that's the laugh of Dr. Chris Burgwald, the snicker of Dr. Chris Burgwald, who is back with us for some Biblical Bites with Dr. B. You've been gone.
I have been gone. I don't know if that's anything to do with the fact that, you don't normally have apparently interesting conversations or not.
Maybe.
So it's going to be back.
Yes, I'm glad you're here. We missed you.
I'm glad you're here too. I'm curious to know, Renee, because you were in a good rhythm.
Yeah.
When I was here previously.
Good rhythm.
Of
like actually keeping up?
Doing homework.
Oh no, I did not do homework.
So do you have any idea what Sunday we're looking at today? It's a serious sigh.
16th?
No, 18th.
18th. Okay. Well,
18th.
I was at least still in the teens.
You were.
I'm going to give myself that.
So we are chugging along through ordinary time. Do you remember what year we're in?
Year B, I believe.
Right.
Okay.
What was and normally year B, and I just tipped my hand. That's okay though. Normally year B, we read from
Mark.
Right.
Yeah.
But right now,
it's probably
in the
John,
late teens,
is my guess. Yeah.
We are hearing from the Gospel of St. John.
Mm-hmm.
So as longtime listeners have heard, regularly we point out the fact that the first reading and the psalm, the responsorial psalm, and the gospel are thematically connected.
Mm-hmm.
And in year B, in the late teens of ordinary time, which typically is going to be late July, August, we get a reading from the Bread of Life discourse. Mm-hmm. So because we have a little bit of time, I want to talk briefly about that, but then I want to focus on the second reading, which is thematically separate.
Okay.
So what I just want to point out, so the Bread of Life discourse is what the name scholars give a chunk of John's gospel found in chapter 6, where Jesus, this is right after, and we heard this last Sunday, there's a miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. And then there's that night there's a walking on water miracle.
Oh, yeah.
And the next day, Jesus is in the synagogue in Capernaum, where he talks about how he is the bread of life. So we're hearing this over the course of several Sundays in the gospel reading from John chapter 6. I just want to point out, I think it's really fitting that as we are now in the third year of the Eucharistic revival, having just completed a few weeks ago in Indianapolis, not completed, but had the National Eucharistic Congress. To me, it's fitting that we're hearing about John 6. But
Yeah.
I want to actually focus my attention this particular week on the second reading, which is from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians. So this is what St. Paul writes to the Ephesians. This is from chapter 4 in the letter to the Ephesians. Brothers and sisters, I declare and testify to the Lord, or in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their minds. That is not how you learned Christ, assuming that you have learned of him and were taught in him, as truth is in Jesus. That you should put away the old self of your former way of life, corrupted through deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self, created in God's way in righteousness and holiness of truth. So what's interesting to me about this and why I wanted to highlight it for today is that Paul is writing to these new Christians who are, most of whom were they're Gentile Christians. They weren't raised as Jews. They were pagans before, but now they're followers of Jesus Christ. But they have to stop living the way that they used to live and living the way that the Gentiles continue to do. And the key is the renewal of their minds. So I think this is relevant for us today. So he talks about how the Gentiles live in the futility of their minds. He calls for them to be renewed in the spirit of their minds, and to be the fact they're created in holiness of truth. So this is just a reminder to me that to be a Christian, to be a missionary disciple, and to grow in our discipleship with the Lord has to involve not just accepting, but embracing and living out the truths that he has revealed. People know this, but it's really easy for us to sort of reduce the faith to what we're drawn to. Mm-hmm. And for some people, there can be that sort of the emotional high that comes with a new conversion or a profound moment in our journey. For other people, it can be focusing on prayer, for other people on good works. It's got to be all those things, though, including the renewal of our minds. He says this is in Romans chapter 2. And I just think it's worth, especially in our culture today, not living as Gentiles do, not living as the culture does, but living in the truth that the Lord has revealed to us through Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Thanks a lot, Dr. B. Let's move on to our interview.